Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. This is a show about astrology, as you know, and it's always a fascinating topic for me. I spend a great deal of my time and energy focused on what's happening in the world, and I love to share that with you and with my guests who come on to help enlighten us all with what's going on in the world. We live in a very fractious time, as we all know. It seems as if the world is coming apart at the seams, but there is some light in the cloud there somewhere, we hope. Before we get started with my guest, I want to let you know about my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday afternoon. In there, I do 2 paragraphs of mundane astrology, which sort of covers the planet for everybody, all signs, and then I break it out into individual signs. I encourage you to read your sun sign and your rising sign each week. And if you have any questions and you want to support me further, I encourage you to reach out for me and get a private reading, which you'll find incredibly enlightening. So, without any further ado, my guest today is the one and only Michael Lutin. He's got a brand new website, michaellutin.com. Fascinating guy out in New York City. He's got his homepage there, a wonderful new site, a bold new look for him, and it's a wonderful step into a big new area for him, and I'm very excited to see that. And I was thinking the other day about talking about what's going on with the eclipse and sort of the aftermath, and so I asked Michael if he could come on today. He's agreed to come on, so we're going to have a great conversation about the aftermath. And without any further ado, here's Mikey. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
Nice to be here. Are we on television?
No, we're not on television. I didn't shave, so we better not be.
I spent $3,800 on hair and makeup, and this is what, like audio only?
Oh, no. I'll try to record you. I didn't realize you had that much money invested in your hair.
I do. I have to make it look as absent as possible.
You got to polish that dome somehow every day, right? You got to keep that gleaming. So
nice to be here, though. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's always great to have you. And I love your new website. I think it's really classy. It's got a lot of neat stuff there. I love the idea that you got a private club, which is a really cool thing. That way people can get some extra information that is from you.
We haven't opened the private club yet. That's probably going to be December.
Okay. And you have to be over 21,
so.
Right?
You have to be over 21 to get into that club.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm.
So listen, I don't know about you, but I drove down to Tennessee, believe it or not, on August 21st in the midst of all that to see the eclipse in totality, which I have to say was a life-changing experience. And as we look out at the skies today, we see a lot of what we could easily consider ramifications of that eclipse. And I'm curious as to what you see and what you think about it all.
Well, of course, everybody in the world was saying, what's this going to be? One thing I never thought was that it was going to be the end of Donald Trump. I never thought that. It was 2 on his North Node and ascendant. I never thought it was going to be that. I never thought it really would do anything. All the people who were against Trump thought that this was the end of him. I didn't think so at all. I thought this was going to have personal implications, and I thought America was going to go dark. Now it looks like tonight and tomorrow it may because of the hurricane. But I thought there would be some darkness because that's what the eclipse is. It's passing through darkness to light. Ancient individuals who observed it were frightened when suddenly the dragon swallowed itself and darkness came from light. But every time there's light, it has to be preceded by darkness. And we've grown scientifically aware of what an eclipse is, but the personal implications have never really been totally understood by anybody. I think that we have notions and ideas about what it means. This one, I was in Oxford for this eclipse. I was teaching there for the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and I was thrilled to do that. It was a great week.
Yeah, it sounds it,
time. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was great. And right in the middle of it, Chris, was the eclipse. So they had a big television screen because for us in England it was at nighttime. So for us they had this big. We had a big dining hall. It looked like Hogwarts dining hall. Exactly.
Oh wow!
The Oxford dining hall looked like it was Hogwarts, and they put a big screen up. But what was fantastic, nobody looked at the eclipse while it was happening.
Huh.
And what I said to my colleague Carol, who had actually created that week for us at the faculty, I said, you know what? This is a very interior moment.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very private moment. The sun and moon and the node at 28 Leo, this is a private moment. I think this is really all about facing your need for intimacy. That's what I think this eclipse is. The impossibility of escaping intimacy, and people always want to escape where their north node is, but eventually they come back to the truth of it. And I think that the aftermath of this eclipse is showing people how deeply they need intimacy in their life. Now, you may not be in a relationship, you may not have a relationship, it may not be a romance, maybe with your dog, but people need to face their need to they need to face their inability at a certain point to hide their wishes for a deep connection on a private basis. And the South Node was in Aquarius and the North Node was in Leo, and I believe that's the real meaning. And on September 17th and 18th, when Venus reaches that point, I think each of us in our own way will come to fact that we know, come to understand that each person needs to give love, not just to receive it, because the North Node in Leo is the outpouring of one's your own love, and not to wait for it to happen to you, but to find people to give it to.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's what I think this eclipse is about.
That's a fascinating observation. I think that, it's a basic it's a primal need more than anything else, I think. It's not something that we just do as a whimsy or because we're horny or whatever. We need this on a very primal level because intimacy and connection with others are what we're all about. We are a mirror of each other, and we reflect upon each other in that capacity. So it's a vital piece of who we are to have that intimacy.
I think that's great, Trip. I think if we see a performer on a stage who's authentic, they're coming from a self-expressive point where they're not afraid to be naked on the stage. Mm-hmm. And when we see a performer do that, we get inspired to be authentic ourselves emotionally. One of the people that I always think of is Bette Midler because she is such an authentic performer. I saw her recently. She comes out on stage, spins around. Did I lose weight? Do I look? Don't look at my neck. Don't look at my neck. Don't look at my neck. Okay, the authenticity of that. And Meryl Streep is another one. I saw her come down the red carpet for the Oscars, and one night somebody said to her, "Well, that's a beautiful gown you're wearing," and without hesitating, she said, "Are you kidding? This is the only thing in the closet I could squeeze into." So it is personal self-expression on an authentic basis that inspires your audience. And I believe that this eclipse is about gaining the confidence to express your emotional state and whatever you're feeling more adequately and more authentically. And I think that's the upside of this eclipse. Mm-hmm. I really do.
So how would you sort of spin that onto the country as a whole? Because I see the eclipse in the United States as a sort of a revelatory moment where we sort of wake up from a dream of delusion, perhaps inspired by Neptune, that says, wow, what have we wrought here? What are we looking at? And it's almost, I wonder if it's like, to me, I was thinking of it as an aha moment for the collective consciousness of the United States to say, wow, we are in some deep doo-doo here. What did we do? And I'm wondering if that's something that you might consider as part of a revelation as well.
Well, I would like to think that because we are in a state, but on the news, all that we heard about was, of course, Hurricane Harvey and now what's going on in Florida. And, of course, we care about our own. But half of Bangladesh is underwater.
Oh, I know.
Hundreds of people have died. It's never been once on the news. I think we're still very clannish.
I agree.
I think so. And there's nothing been on there about the Mexico earthquake that I've seen this morning. I watched. It was not a word. It was only about Florida, and I care about it. I have friends and colleagues and family in Florida. Of course I care about it. But I don't know yet if it's visible. I don't know yet if the effects on a mundane level are visible. Certainly, because we're a Cancer country and the eclipse happened in Leo, certainly there are financial implications in this country. Not only from the point of view of what's going on in terms of globalization and the fact that money is about to go through a major transformation all over the world, but these two storms are going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so I believe, and that would maybe unite the country and not drive them apart. But I'm not really sure exactly how, other than the obvious terrible losses people are sustaining. I'm not sure exactly how the eclipse is working. Now, I don't know about this solar flare. They said, I was reading about this. The solar flare had never happened in many years, and it was going to be wrought, it was going to wreak havoc on the world. And in the past few days, of course, it has. I believe that I have many crackpot beliefs about what's going on, behave in the world in terms of the weather. I have a lot of crazy, crackpot, I think completely accurate notions about what's going on that I'm not exactly ready to make public. But I think something vast is happening, not only in this country but the world.
Right.
I've lived on the earth for a while, since I came here, and I've never seen 3 hurricanes in a row in the same place.
No,
I've never seen it.
It is unusual. And when I was younger, I remember having this conversation with my father. My father was a minister, and he used to talk about war and peace all the time. And I'd say, Dad, I think the only time we're ever going to get peace in this world is if we're attacked from some sort of outside entity. And that outside entity would bring us together as a species across the globe because we had to fight a common enemy. I thought, well, if we're going to fight a war, rather than fighting amongst ourselves, why don't we fight the common enemy? In this case, the common enemy might be the weather, or the universe, or the cosmos is saying, you guys are screwing up big time, and this is your battle. I mean, that's my thought. But then when I was thinking about...
So you think that that's the external force?
I think it could very well be. I think, it would be a unifying force. If something happened to the planet that affected all of us, it would unify us as a species because we'd all have to fight back in some way. We'd have to put our brains together instead of fighting over silly things like borders and whatever, and religion and class and structure. We'd be fighting over survival of the planet, and we would do that as a community together. That was my hope as a young child. I can't say it's true now.
Well, I got to say this. There are many groups of people who are concerned about the weather and they're concerned about the planet, but all they're concerned about is to maintain control. So it's not a let's all hold hands and sing feelings.
Oh, I know.
That's not what's happening. I believe that I agree. NASA sent me I thought I told you this when I spoke to you last, maybe not. NASA sent me a book to download, which I did. It was a couple 100 pages of various essays from different physicists and astronomers. And, the book was called Archaeology, Anthropology, and Interstellar Communication.
I remember this. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah. Okay.
I did tell you about that. I read it cover to cover. It was somewhat repetitive because many of the essays were similar. But what it brought to the fore is that there have been projects to create or to at least find communication on an interstellar basis since 1951. And I personally believe that the weather that we're experiencing is not natural and it's not normal. I think that much of it comes from weather engineering that has been secretly going on. A vast number of people are involved in this, partly military all over the world and others. And I believe there may even be some alien intervention on this for a reason I don't know. But it's not natural, and it's not because we threw away our paper cups. It's not the normal thing that people think is global warming because you drank from a glass Coke bottle and threw it away in the ocean, or we have too much plastic or toilet paper. That is also adding to the problem, but something much more vast is happening, whether it's about depopulation or about control of the population. I don't know what the methods are. I listen to all the crackpots on the video and listen to all of the things that are posted on audio, and I make my own decisions. And to this point, I know that something is not natural, something is not normal. There's a lot of human intervention in the weather, and there's a lot of human intervention in politics and finance, and I'm not sure. I can't really say there isn't some other alien intervention involved in this, but it's very, very vast. You know, I'm giving a talk on the 28th of September on this phenomenon that we are now going through between, it's really in full force from September 28th till October 2018, early 2019. It's the presence of Pluto going over its own south node.
Right.
And this has never happened to humanity since we have discovered Pluto. Mm-hmm. Of course, this has happened many times since, before the time of Christ. It happens every couple of hundred years. And the last time this happened was 1730 in the 18th century, before the United States was born. So I believe that it has the political upheavals, the genocide of the natives, all of those, many of these phenomena have happened over and over and over in life, and not only when Pluto went over its south node. However, when Pluto goes over its south node, the upheaval is tremendous because it's a portal for all kinds of forces to stream into the consciousness. And this is the first time it's ever happened since we have discovered Pluto. In 1730, we didn't know what was happening. In the 1700s, we didn't know what was happening, although it has happened, but it happens on an unconscious basis. Here is the first time humanity has an opportunity to experience the phenomenon of Pluto going over its south node with the resultant upheaval in politics, finance, and the geology and the planet on which we live. And so I believe we're at a real tipping point at this very moment between becoming as you said, a unified society and going down the tubes.
Well, we both know that history has a cyclical nature to it, and everything that has happened in the past it does happen again, just in a different context, different time and place. We have had natural catastrophes in the past that have affected the planet that have probably been as severe as this. They may not have been recorded. We don't know what happened with Atlantis, for example. We don't know what happened when Crater Lake was created. We don't know all that stuff. We have ideas, but these were natural disasters that happened probably before history was, began to, the dinosaurs going extinct. We have all these theories, but things must have happened along those times that are now being repeated, and that may very well be tied to a cyclical nature of the planetary movement and what we're seeing. And those are recurring because, as we said, time is like a helios, like a giant corkscrew going through the world around and around and around, but always down the road further in a new framework and context. And maybe we're just seeing the same thing again, what happened 1,000 years ago, but it's now happening in 2017 instead of back then. I mean, does that make sense to you as far as repetitive cycles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But the difference is now Pluto has been discovered.
Right.
That's the difference. The one difference is that when a planet comes into consciousness, it becomes incumbent upon the human race to raise the level of its response to the planetary vibration.
I see. So in other words, once the planet is discovered, before it's being discovered, and I believe this too, before it's discovered, it's a somewhat of benign influence, since it's not really part of our consciousness, correct?
I would say it's not part of our consciousness, but it certainly represents our unconscious responses to the forces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the last time this happened, well, 2 times ago in the 1500s, it was the massacre of the Native Americans by Columbus. It was the same time that Cortez overthrew the Aztec civilization.
Mm-hmm.
So the white people coming to this North American and South American continents coincided with the Pluto going over its own south node, and that meant genocide for many, 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 many people. And what has happened is, when a superior civilization encounters an inferior civilization, historically the inferior civilization disappears. So it's incumbent upon us at this particular time to try to change that, because if there are alien beings, they must be really disgusted with the vibrations that have been coming from this planet, especially since 1945, with the enormous explosions we've been sending into the universe. You can't do something like that where it doesn't have repercussions for anyone outside listening.
Right.
So I think it's right now we're at an amazing moment of possibility for our culture and our civilization. But I'm not going to be... Sorry?
Do you think it's a make or break situation?
Yes. Because we never had the possibility before to destroy the world until the A-bomb happened.
Mm-hmm.
Even in ancient times, when the flood came, what was the world when the whole world was supposedly flooded? It was maybe a few countries, because that was the world then. This is the planet. And what I think it is, I think it's a make or break situation. In 1965, I think it was, Carl Sagan and Ivan Shklovsky wrote a very wonderful book, a little dated now in terms of the physics. It was called Intelligent Life in the Universe. And one of their conclusions was, according to the what I forget the guy's name, the equation of how many planets existed that it could support life. One of the things that Sagan said in that book was that when a civilization reaches a point of technical expertise, they have about 100 years to decide whether they're going to be an eternally prosperous and productive civilization or destroy themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you take a look at 1939, that's when it all started, right? The bombs and
right.
the rockets. So if you think another 20 years, that's the end of the 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
If Carl Sagan and his physics partner who wrote that book, if they were correct, then we are at a tipping point. We now can kill ourselves. Look at Fukushima.
Yeah,
Look at Hiroshima.
I know. It is ominous. It certainly is ominous. And getting back to something you said earlier, there was a news story in the paper last week about radio waves being intercepted from an outside source for the first time ever, I think. So that does give credence to the idea that there may be some outside force that is bearing witness to all that we're going through, and perhaps even be responsible for some of it. But weather engineering is kind of a far-fetched...
no, it isn't.
I don't know. I mean, isn't that what Rush Limbaugh was alluding to, that it was fake news?
Wait a minute.
No, that's different.
Not everything that he says is wrong.
Right.
Not everything that Alex Jones says is wrong. They're showmen, and they're very... it's very easy to write off a moron. But today's moron can sometimes be tomorrow's visionary.
Right.
So I don't take everything that he says at all seriously, or Alex Jones, or any of them. But I listen to them, and I try to sift out what is probable and what is possible and what is impossible, and to my knowledge or to my ability to accept it. I now have investigated many studies of the environment and many studies of weather engineering, many studies of possible alien intervention, and I cannot write every bit of it off anymore after I've seen so much evidence.
Well, weather engineering would imply somebody pulling strings to make something happen, is what I would boil it down to. And do you think that would be? I mean, why else would we be getting hurricanes like this? I mean, there is some scientific logic to the water heating up. The temperatures are heating up. You get more evaporation.
Why?
Why? I don't know. I think that could be from petrochemicals. I mean, it's carbon dioxide is at the core of it. I mean, that's part of it.
Just all you. I'm sorry, Chris.
No.
All you have to do is go outside someday and look up and see what's happening.
You think the chemtrails and stuff like that?
All you have to do is look at it. I've been all over the world in the last few years. I've been in Bali. I've been in Australia. I've been in South America. I've been in the west coast of America, and it's everywhere.
When you say it's everywhere, what are you referring to? You're saying the presence of this.
I believe that there's intervention in the weather. I have evidence of it. I have. I'm not going to go any further today with you here publicly. I have a colleague who's a scientific colleague who's gathered evidence and irrefutable evidence.
Interesting. To what end would this be for? Would it be to end civilization? Would it be to is an antagonistic approach?
I think the fear. I can't say. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, there would have to be a motive, right? Have to be a motive.
There is a motive, but as I say, I don't know what that motive is. But let's put it this way. The forces of consciousness and light represented by you and people like you are in a very strong battle against opposite forces right now that are really out for gain, profit, and God knows what else. Because this portal that's opening is allowing a lot of negative energy in, and the positive people like yourself and all the people who do what you do are fighting this badly. That's why you're having these podcasts. That's why you devote your life to it. And yet, one of the wonderful things that's happening is people are still falling in love and having babies. You've got a brand new grandchild yourself.
Right.
So there's a force of life that's just as strong as whatever is going now is not in favor of productivity and life in nature. Whether it's, you want to call it the South Node or the Pluto in Capricorn or whatever you want to call it, there's a force that is very, very frightened, fearful, and ungenerous to others. And it's a major, major battle between the forces of good and light and consciousness and love and another force that's operating, which I can't say it's alien. I can't say it's a cabal of very rich people. I don't know who is involved, but it's vast for this to be happening all over the world.
Right. And you don't think it's at our own hands that this has happened?
Well, here's what happens. I mean, now we're getting into this weird thing. That, we're all slaves to society and order. The slave masters who run things, corporate, whatever, whoever they are, government people, they create products and they advertise these products that we all want. They're very seductive. So we go out and we buy them, but then we have to work for the slave masters to pay for them. The society of order is breaking down as Pluto is now coming to the end of Capricorn, and the restive, unhappy people are getting impossibly chained to their jobs and to a life that is not full of freedom and enjoyment. there is going to be a world revolution here. Whether it comes from the spaceships, I could never tell you. But I don't look to the spaceships to save us. But I think that we are now on the brink of a huge breakthrough in planetary and galactic consciousness. I truly believe that with all my heart. I believe that there's consciousness out there. Some of the beings out there are great. Some of them are sexy, and some of them are jerks. Mm-hmm. So I can't really say what I think in terms of. I can't really say what I think in terms of who it is, but there is as above, so below, as below, so above. I think that there's consciousness going on. There's a wonderful explosion of positive consciousness throughout the galaxy. People are waking up to it. And also at the same time, whoever is out there and whoever is in here, there's good people and there's bad people on the earth and everywhere else. And I think we're on a fantastic... Now, we're not only on the tipping point of destruction. I think we're also on the tipping point of exploding with awareness and consciousness that we belong to a planetary society. We belong to a galactic society. And I'm very excited about that. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. And that's what you keep doing, what you're doing. You know, Gene Roddenberry in the 60s, when I remember, seeing what was possible in somebody's imagination, that guy was definitely an out-of-towner, Chris.
Yeah.
That guy did not come from New Jersey. That guy was from someplace else to have that kind of vision.
Yeah, no, I do. I see what you're saying, and it does hold a lot of truth to it, and it's incredibly interesting. I want to get into it some more after the break here. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in a few minutes. We're talking today with Michael Lutin. He's got a brand new website, michaellutin.com. I encourage you to go check it out on the break and touch base with him. He's got a wonderful new way of approaching this subject, and his knowledge of astrology is vast and important. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. Again, michaellutin.com is his website. Hang in there, folks, and we'll be right back.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.turningofthewheel.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. And enter a world of possibility and color.
Okay, welcome back to Turning the Wheel. My guest today is the one and only Michael Lutin, Mikey Lutin, out in New York City. His website is michaellutin.com, michaellutin.com. Michael Lutin, he's on Facebook. You can follow him there. Always a interesting guy with a great sense of acerbic humor, sort of a cutting commentary, and a whimsical logic behind all that he does, which I've always admired. So it's great to have you on today to speak, Michael. Now, we were talking before about the idea of where we are and the possibility that some of this is out of our control. Now, some of the things that you mentioned could easily spin into the realm of conspiracy theory. There's this cabal that's out there, these powerful men that are working behind a cloaked veil of secrecy to to machinate our lives and all that. Doesn't that seem a little surreal in some respect? I mean, we have knowledge.
If you want to discredit someone, just tell them it sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and today, that discredits people immediately.
Because
Alex Jones, for example, is a showman and is very crazy and is not always accurate at all on the things that he says. So you can't listen to everything. But can you listen to anything on the evening news?
Well,
I ask you that question. If you won't listen to Alex Jones or people like him on any level, how could you listen to the NBC News where you don't hear any news?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's up to the individual to provide. Where are you feeling most comfortable? What do you find? Where do you issue a discretion to determine where you get your news?
Okay, let me tell you one thing about Alex Jones. Okay, he is nuts. He is very nuts, and he's made a fool of himself on television more than once. Mm-hmm. He really has. But I'll tell you something very odd about him. That's why I don't completely discount him. When I went to Bali for the first time, I think it was the first time, I went, and as my plane was landing, the earthquake was happening in Fukushima, in Japan.
Oh, wow.
And I got there, and we had to go to higher ground because a tsunami was, they were afraid of a tsunami. It didn't really actually finally happen. But when I got to where I was going, Melanie Reinhardt was there, and she said, "Do you have your computer with her?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, let's listen to this guy, Alex Jones, because he always gets this kind of information early." So we tuned into him on my computer, and he had his finger on the pulse beat. He had his finger on the pulse, I should say, of he has, I guess people all out in the field. But he completely gave, and this was what, 2011?
Yeah.
He completely gave his analysis of what he thought Fukushima was, what was happening out there, and what he thought was going to be the result. And he's been 100% accurate about the fact that the radioactive water is still pouring into the Pacific and ruining the Pacific. And I know he sounded crazy when he said it, but it's exactly what he knew would happen. I don't think he's psychic. I think he had people who were there who knew the extent of the damage. He's not accurate or trustworthy in a lot of situations. And neither is, what's his name, Limbaugh, of course not. They say things. But just the way the Evening News does, you have to titrate it. You can't believe or discount anything.
But it doesn't take a psychic or a genius to realize that if a nuclear power plant gets disrupted in an earthquake, you're going to have residual damage. It's going to continue for quite some time. I could figure that out. You did not hear the specific things he said. I did. Okay. All right. I mean, it does make
Okay?
sense. I mean, that was always the concern about, the San Andreas Fault. Why would you build nuclear power reactors on the San Andreas Fault when you know that at some point in time that fault is going to give way, and that's going to create more nuclear problems? That's just common sense can tell us that. Now, when we cannot say that. I mean, an earthquake is not something that you could predict. We have scientists who understand what subduction and the plate movement and plate tectonics are all about.
Do you think it's possible to create an earthquake?
Oh, I think they have created them in Oklahoma due to fracking. Yes, but I'm not sure they can create one off the coast of Japan. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, you're talking about. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose all things are on the table at this point.
I never said that they did that. I'm not saying that was created. You just brought that up, but I just said I don't know. I think it's possible.
Well, I am a person who believes that anything is possible. I do believe that in my core. I could almost believe to the fact that we could. Who's to say we couldn't wake up some morning and the Atlantic Ocean isn't there anymore? I don't know. I think anything was in the realm of possibility. So I am open to this.
I think weather is a very excellent thing to be able to control as a weapon.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you've got to be. It's got a little bit of storm seeding, cloud seeding kind of quality to it, but
you want to create. Suppose you want to create a drought. Suppose you want to create a flood. Suppose you want to control the water flow and the water and food production. Let's say that let's just say there are people out there who are so mad for control over the population that they would do anything to be able to control the food and water supply in the next 50 years.
What would be the motive?
Control and power and survival.
And you think that this is a human element, or this is an extra?
Yes.
You do?
I think that's a human element, because water and food supply are going to be the two major issues in the next 50 years.
How about
the population continues to...
How about Darwinism? How about the sort of the survival of the fittest, and this is sort of nature cleansing itself because we've become overpopulated? Isn't that something that could also occur?
Absolutely, and I think you're quite right. And I also think that there are people who believe that in the survival of the fittest, they're the fittest. I believe that we've never been encountering a more cynical bunch of people. Do you know that Columbus's men, if you read his diary, Columbus's men didn't really see the North American continent as populated. They didn't even see the natives as humans. They used them for dog food. They didn't even understand that they were like this. They get here, the white people get here. They look around and they say to the natives, "This place is beautiful. Get out."
I know. I see what you're saying.
And what is happening now is the same thing. The south node of Pluto is on its own south node, and the same sort of greed and ignorance has taken over many people. Not a lot of people, not everybody. Mm. But some people who believe that for their own survival they have to subjugate others.
Well,
Columbus wrote back to the people in Spain. These people they don't even have any guns. They would be so easy to subjugate. Mm-hmm. It's like somebody coming into your house, Chris, and saying, "You got this place fixed up nice. Yeah, your wife's got a lot of taste, and this is cute. Get out."
I know. I mean, I guess there is that quality. It's a human quality of envy and power and control. I see where you're driving at.
That's the dark side of Capricorn, and that's the dark side.
Right.
The light side of Capricorn, which a lot of people doesn't exist, is honest leadership.
Steadfast,
sober, honest leadership.
Steadfast backbone, absolutely, yeah. It's the mountain goat climbing up the mountain. I understand that.
It's living within the tenets of the civil liberties and the civil laws that are made by the social contract of the people.
But you know what? I also would argue. I also would think this. I also think that we are a dualistic entity, and we live in a dualistic world. Everything we see is a reflection of everything else, and so for every negative or black moment that there may be, or harmful darkness that happens, there's going to be an equal amount of light that's coming forth. I believe we are in a constant balance in that regard.
I agree with you.
And so even though
I think we're in a battle for it now,
yeah,
because I think that the forces of light are dangerously in jeopardy from the forces of darkness.
Or listen to this. Maybe the darkness realizes that the light is beginning to get brighter, and therefore they're trying to counteract. Because I do believe we're on an upward spiral of some sort.
I just said that. I said I believe we're in an explosion of galactic consciousness, and it's not just people in Birkenstocks who say that. I believe that we are as a species. Do you ever go on the dodo?
That rings a bell, but I don't think I can. I've not.
The dodo is the most uplifting thing on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The dodo is these little video vignettes that somebody puts together of all of the animals doing amazing things for each other in different species.
Okay.
I saw a tiger and a what was it? A tiger, a huge cat, and a parrot sitting together watching the sunset. It wasn't photoshopped. There was an elephant recently. It was so cute. This little young elephant, and a man was swimming in this swimming hole in the lake, or the river, and the elephant thought the man was drowning, so it jumped in and it insisted the guy get out of the water. He was having the best time. The elephant would not stop until the guy was safe. Yeah. So what we're watching is just what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
We're watching, and I see it on the dodo. Whenever it pops up, I always take time to watch it. It's fantastic things of animals with themselves, with each other, with different species, and interaction with humans that is unusual.
No, I think that's happening. I believe that happening too. And the thing is that I think that we live in a swirl in the path of a pendulum that swings from one extreme to the other, and we are at some point in time we are going to be in an extreme of either of what we don't like, or we're going to be an extreme of what we do like. And I think that balance is necessary. It's kind of like if you don't have a sunny day, you're not going to have the rain. If you don't have the rain, you're not going to have a sunny day. That's a very true statement and very optimistic. Well, I am optimistic. I've got Jupiter in my 8th house.
And so am I. If I were not optimistic, I'd get out of astrology.
You're right.
I'm also saying to you that people are not aware enough that a vast operation is going on that is not really for the benefit of humanity or the earth.
And you think that this is being engineered as opposed to just a byproduct of evolution?
Yes.
You think this is a conscious decision to be engineered to have this outcome? So the propensity of the cell phones and people being distracted and this constant...
I didn't say that. You jumped to cell phones.
Well, okay. I think that's a good example of how we have changed, and it does support the argument that somebody somewhere is in charge. If this is a type of an instrument that draws our attention away from us and pulls us into a realm.
I think, yes. I think everything is a distraction. The whole thing about Trump is a distraction. The whole thing about North Korea is a distraction. Everything that's going on about the political and mundane society is a distraction from the huge globalization of finance that's going on, and the manipulation of the weather. I think that never is it mentioned. It's amazing. Jim Cantore, he's the guy on the Weather Channel. He must think I'm the crazed fan of all. I've been writing to him for months, a couple of years now, because he was a great hero in Katrina. He stayed down in New Orleans and everybody left. But he has a family to support. He can't come out and say what is going on in the sky, what is going on with the weather. He has to just report what's happening, and they make up names for clouds. You're an Earth person. You're a human being. You've lived here all your life. Did you ever hear the names of these clouds that they're giving them that are square clouds and things that are not natural? And you think that's just because we had too much Coca-Cola?
No, but I've never heard of a square cloud, to be honest. So maybe I'm a little bit out of the loop in that regard. I see where you're coming from. I'm not going to take, I'm not going to disparage what you're saying, and there may be some validity to it. I'm not questioning that. What concerns me is that much of what we are seeing, I do also believe, can be explained scientifically in some capacity. It does make sense. I don't think that they're backing themselves into the story, saying, "Oh, this is just because of the car you're driving that this is." I don't think that's made up per se. They're not backing that story. They're not backing into that.
It's not made up. I mean, what gasoline has done to the air is obvious, of course. But what I think what I'm trying to say is the idea of making people feel more that life is easier is a major distraction from the fact that incarnation is not easy. It's filled with suffering. And whatever society does to make people distracted from the truth of their incarnation and the fact of what they're really supposed to be doing here is learning to be compassionate and loving. Instead of that, we're encouraged to get more things, buy more things, have more distractions that make us distracted from the fact that we're not really happy. Mm-hmm. And the real happiness comes from opening up to the compassion of all beings. And I think that that's not what capitalism or the Western society is all about.
Right, and I agree with you.
Believe me.
Yeah, I think that's
true. I like
to
travel business class like the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, I'm a member of society, and I'm subject to all the distractions that are possible. I love a nice pizza.
I do too. I think I understand where you're coming from, and I do believe that our greater purpose is to find that sense of self in ourselves. And I don't think that we should be suffering under the illusion that life is wonderful. Life is difficult. It's probably the most difficult thing that any of us are going to assume are going to endure. And for us to go through life thinking that it's going to be hunky dory is a complete fallacy. Anything that happens that's good to us is just gravy, to be honest. We are born, man was born to suffer, as it says in the Bible. But it is a time where we try to find happiness. I think we do suffer under an illusion of capitalism that paints this picture of, you're going to be much better off if you own this Mercedes. If you wear these shoes, you're going to be a much happier person. I get that. But I also feel
everything
is...
I'm listening.
No, I'm saying that I think that these are all distractions they are false and man-made distractions that are bringing us to this place where we think that, we're afraid of death in this country. And in America, people are scared to death. No pun intended.
That's my point exactly. It's all to allay the death anxiety and to realize that the life that we're leading is brief. It's over in an instant. And if there's any purpose to consciousness, which you and I both believe, that's why we're astrologers, if there is a purpose to consciousness, it's to open up to a greater beauty and light that exists everywhere. And that is, of course, love.
Accept this as part of our trial. This is part of our trial, is to find that. And it seems as if it is incredibly difficult for people to get to that space. If that's the and I think that they can't get there because of the distractions. Is that what you're basically saying? So if we weren't distracted, we would be able to arrive at this place easier?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're not going to face the distraction, if you're not going to embrace the distraction, you have to understand that death is all around us and that death is a reality that religion and government and school tries to distract us from. But that life is very brief, and if there's any purpose to consciousness, it's to know the incredible liberation of loving all beings. Mm. And that is something that we're not taught in Western society and capitalism. And our whole Western civilization was, of course, based on conquest.
Right.
And so, conquest and domination of others. And this whole thing about removing statues, at first, it bugged me because I thought, Well, I don't care if there's a Robert E. Lee statue. I know that, they had a anti-human philosophy, but I also know that a lot of young men were led into the war in the Confederacy, and that they thought they were doing something heroic, and that to strip them of any kind of honor for their fight, that bothers me also. On the other hand, now that I think about taking Columbus down from Columbus Circle in New York, I'm happy about it, because the more I read about Columbus, I think I'm embarrassed. So, yeah, if they call it Columbus Circle, the Time Warner Building,
right,
I'd rather call it the Time Warner Building, because I was taught like everybody else. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But in 1521, they killed all the Indians.
right.
So it's just wild
Mm-hmm.
to have. But I think somebody suggested there should be a museum. It's a great idea. And there should be an anthropological museum, that heroes and villains should all be in that same museum.
Right.
Don't you think that's a good idea?
No, I do. And, you could argue, I think there's an argument to be made for the existence of these statues based on the premise that we do not do this again. Let these be reminders. It's the same thing if you go to a concentration. You go to a concentration camp in Germany. I've been to one. I went to Dachau when I was younger. Horrendous place to visit, but
scary.
But to go there and to see this is as a reminder. We say to ourselves, never again. This serves as a viable reminder, never again. It all depends upon how they are presented. A statue that's being raised up and held in the light as being a heroic thing is different than a statue being held up and saying, shame on us for doing this. So it's a matter of interpretation, I think.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
But
That's completely true.
But I see how people are responding to this, and we can't rewrite history. What we can do is learn from it. That's what we'd hope to do. We would hope to learn from this situation, that we would not do these things again. And yet we see the cycles are there. All of mythology, all of history, all of literature is a repetitive cycle of what went on before. It's just different characters with different shoes on. That's all it really
I believe that I think that you and I and the people in our calling are anthropologists. We are planetary anthropologists. Mm-hmm. And as we begin to expand our awareness of the life on other planets, the idea of the evolution of anthropological evolution of beings, sentient beings, is going to be a very interesting one when we start looking at the history of other beings as well. They've already discovered Earth-like planets outside the solar system. Mm-hmm. So it's only a matter of short time before we start examining the creatures and the beings who evolved on that place. But I think that I consider myself a planetary anthropologist, because a lot of my work is based upon repetition of cycles, as I'm discussing the Pluto now. And I think that these things have happened so many times before. I'm just looking at all the things back from the time of Christ and in the early part of the new era, of every time that there was a big Pluto aspect, because it was all unconscious. It was all buried in the unconscious mind. But this is the first time that Pluto has ever crossed its own south node since it's been discovered. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we're in a most historical time of our whole evolution, starting in 2008. But starting in this September, it's going to approach the node really deeply. So I'm watching the next 2 years as leaders being put in and taken out, and an incredible amount of chaos that is all organized around keeping order in a society that is collapsing because it needs to change.
Well, we do need to change. There's no question about it. We've all had this conversation, at least in astrological circles, that when Pluto entered Capricorn, it would be the destruction of an entity and then the rebuilding of an entity for a far better purpose. I believe we're on the cusp of that. I believe it's a long-range change that's going to happen, but I do see the underpinnings of it there, and I think it is in motion. And I think that this eclipse, in some ways, symbolically at least, which we all deal with symbolism in astrology, sort of had the fact that it bisected the United States, I think brings to light this disparity between us as a divided nation. It sort of is symbolic of this
That's right.
great gap that we have between what we think.
And it sort of did, didn't it? You're right. It sort of divided between North and South in a way, didn't it?
In a way, I mean, maybe that's just symbolic, and maybe it could have been East and West. I mean, it could have been, the West Coast and the East Coast versus the middle. Who does? I mean, the determination of that is not important. It's the symbolism of the eclipse sort of cutting through the middle of the country that highlighted this disparity. We have more hatred and vitriol now than we have had in ages, all because it's been inflamed and fired up by an evil person.
I think that's absolutely right.
But I also think
that's absolutely right.
Yeah, that in that same sort of idea, beneath all of astrology, I believe, is a mathematical order that identifies and sort of explains much of why things happen when they do. I think that it's a mathematical construct based on geometry, and that may just be the natural order of how we evolve as a universe, and not necessarily at the control of any human being.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. People can't face that there's math underneath it. I think Carl Sagan had something in one of his books. I think it might have been Contact. Didn't he write that? No, who wrote that? He did, right? Carl Sagan?
Don't know, but I know that the mathematics is there.
Somebody believed that pi was the address of our dimension.
Yes, I think
the mathematical pi. That was the, and when you take the square root of 10, it comes very close to 3.14. So the square root of 10, and that we have 10 fingers and 10. I mean, there's a mathematics that's very hard to accept underneath it all.
Oh, I know, but
because I'm such a romantic idiot, I believe that there's also love underneath it all, because I think this eclipse was about love.
Yeah.
And that people are all, you can rationalize, you can discuss, you can disagree, but in the end, if you don't have love, you don't have nothing.
I agree with you. Yeah, I can see that.
And look at you. You're gaga for this baby. You're kooky for this baby. You're insane for this baby. And the thing is that's really what it's all about, is being absolutely out of control. Mm-hmm. That your heart takes over what your head denies. And that, I believe, is... And everybody gets screwed up by love. Everybody does. Love is a disease everybody wants till they get it. And the thing is that's the only reason to be alive, is that love takes over, and you don't have any. And you know what? When Venus comes along and hits you over the head with one of her boobs, you're done for. And I think that the North Node in Leo eclipse is a total eclipse. It's healthy. There's love happening actually when you see what happened in Harvey, how people were helping each other. There was one woman I saw on TV, her house was ruined. She couldn't even go back to it yet, and she didn't even go back to it. She was helping the people who couldn't get into their house. So there is a lot of love that has come out of this eclipse. But I think that the most, for me, I think that the inescapable truth of intimacy, you're feeling it with your grandchild. When you look at that little kid and that kid looks at you, there's nothing else that exists in the world. Even Fukushima. Right. None of it. Isn't that true, though, Chris?
Oh, I agree. No, I think that I think love conquers all. I think that the problem is that in order to have that, because of the dualistic nature of our beings, we have to have the other element as a reflective quality. That's what concerns me. And when one becomes more predominant than the other, then the other takes over. This is the yin and yang of life. So even though we may be madly in love and want to catch that disease, sometimes that disease catches us and falls apart, and then we end up hating that person, which is then the opposite. And it's this bouncing back and forth that concerns me. I mean, I realize that, but
I just saw something on Facebook this morning I thought was quite interesting. Someone wrote, "There is no one on earth you couldn't love once you find out their story."
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
I love that. I do. And I think that's what astrology is to me. Astrology is a series of stories, and the stories are there. And when you discover the stories, I think I said this many times to my clients. I said in many ways, astrology is the perfect validating, it's the most it's the highest form of toleration there is, because it allows you to say, this person is this way because they were born this way, and we love them as they are. Period. The end.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've run out of time, Michael, as I knew we would. But always, as always, with you, a great conversation. We've been talking today with Michael Lutin. His new website is michaellutin.com, michaellutin.com. I encourage you to go there, sign up, view his stuff, follow him on Facebook, see where he is. He's a wild character with lots of insights, and always a great time talking to you, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on today. I wish we had another hour to talk, but we don't. Next time.
Okay, we will again. Thanks so much.
Okay.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.